Welcome to this explainer. We throw around country names every single day, right? But have you ever actually stopped to wonder about the deep, hidden history behind a name you hear all the time? Well, today we're unpacking a mystery that's literally hiding in plain sight. We are going to uncover the true meaning of Ireland.
So, why is Ireland called Ireland? I mean, it seems like a straightforward question, but the answer is this fantastic journey through ancient Indo-European linguistics, a couple of major invasions, and honestly, some of the most beautiful mythology you're ever going to hear. And to really get the history, we actually have to start with the myth.
Section 1. The Goddess of the Land. To really wrap our heads around this modern country's name, we need to travel way back into the mists of ancient Celtic lore. In these ancient texts, we meet Iriu. She is a Gaelic goddess of sovereignty. Now, she isn't just some deity who happens to, live on the island. She is the island. She's the beautiful, powerful personification of the very soil itself. To the ancient people living there, the land and the goddess were literally one and the same.
So how exactly does a goddess become a country? Well, in a medieval mythological cycle called the Book of Invasions, there's a story about a group called the Milesians, the mythical ancestors of the Irish people. When they finally arrived to claim the island, they met Ériu, and a poet among them made this profound poetic promise. If they succeeded in taking the land, the island would carry her name forever. She agreed, and they absolutely kept their word.
But here's a fun little twist. Ériu wasn't flying solo. She actually had two equally formidable sisters, Bamba and Fodla. Now, Ériu obviously won the ultimate naming rights for the country, but those Milesian poets, they were smart enough not to anger her sisters. So while Bamba and Fodla didn't win the main contest, their names actually survived as these beautiful, poetic names for the island. You can still find them popping up in Irish literature and traditional songs even today.
Section 2. Ancient Settlers and Celts.
All right, so that's the mythological side of things. But let's look at the historical reality. Who was actually living there before English was ever spoken on the island? While the myths talk about these magical races like the Tuatha De Danann and the Milesians, modern genetic and historical research paints a slightly different picture. The earliest historical settlers actually migrated from Iberia right after the most recent Ice Age. Then, later on during the Bronze Age, new migrants arrived and introduced a Celtic language and culture to the island. And it's these people whose genetic heritage still makes up the majority of Irish people today.
But you know what I love? I love how history and myth sometimes perfectly echo each other. In the mythology, there's a character named Ith. He's the first of the Milesians to spot Ireland from Iberia, which matches that real-world migration route perfectly, by the way. When he steps ashore, he just marvels at the island's incredible abundance, saying, "You dwell in a good land. Abundant are its mast and honey and wheat and fish." That whole idea of a fertile, abundant land, that's going to be incredibly important in just a second.
Section 3. Tracing the Celtic language.
Okay, so we know who was living there, but what language were they speaking, and how did our goddess's name evolve over time? Well, the Celtic language evolved over millennia. Way back in the Proto-Celtic era, the word was Fidrian. Fast forward to the archaic Irish era, and it shifts to Iriu. By the time we hit the Old Irish era, which is when the monks were actually writing down those myths we talked about, it becomes Éiriu, the exact name of our goddess. Finally, as the language continues to modernize, it settles right into Éire, which is the official modern Irish name for the country today.
Now, here is what's really fascinating. Where do linguists think that original Proto-Celtic word came from? They trace it all the way back to a Proto-Indo-European root, phwerion, which literally translates to fat. But in the context of soil, it means a fertile or abundant land. This brilliantly doubles down on the mythological idea. The island is literally named for being a fertile, abundant place, which, as we know, was perfectly personified by a beautiful goddess.
Section 4. Enter the English language.
So picture this. We've got the native population speaking their language and calling their abundant, goddess-blessed island Éire. But history rarely stands still, right? Following the Anglo-Norman invasion, English speakers started arriving on the island. And when languages collide, they usually compromise. The English speakers heard the locals calling the place Éire, but instead of replacing the name entirely, they just adapted it to fit their own linguistic habits by simply adding their own word for a place.
And that brings us to a literal linguistic equation. They took the native name Éire and just tacked the English word land right onto the end of it. Éire plus land. Say it fast enough over a few centuries, and Ere land simply becomes Ireland. It literally just means the land of Ere.
Section 5. Hibernia and other names.
Now, before English standardized this name for the rest of the world, other ancient cultures had their own versions based on what they heard the locals saying. Way back around 320 BC, the Greek explorer Pytheas called it Irne. Later on, the Romans adapted the archaic Irish name into Hibernia. And actually, that Roman name is still alive today. If you've ever heard the specific dialect and rhythm of English spoken by Irish people referred to as Hiberno-English, well, that is a direct callback to the old Roman name for the island.
But getting the native name right really matters, especially when it comes to writing. For centuries, Irish was written in a traditional Gaelic alphabet, but when printing eventually switched over to the standard Latin alphabet used in English, it caused some unexpected issues with the little accent marks. You see, Eire, with the accent mark, which is called a Shinad Fada in Irish, means Ireland. But if you drop that accent mark and just write Eire, it becomes a completely different word meaning a burden, load, or encumbrance. In fact, back in 1974, an Irish politician named Noel Davern actually brought this up in Parliament. He was furious that the state's postage stamps were leaving off the accent mark for artistic reasons and accidentally calling the entire country a burden. Talk about a typo, right?
Section 6. The true meaning of Ireland.
Okay, let's tie this whole shebang together. As one historian so beautifully put it, hidden inside the English word Ireland is the much older name Ere, and behind Ere is an even older idea, a mythological figure who represented the land itself. Just think about that. Despite centuries of invasions, major genetic shifts, and the widespread adoption of the English language, the original spirit of the island's name survived perfectly intact. It was just hiding right there in the English language the whole time.
Which brings us to our final thought. When you say the word Ireland, are you actually just saying Ere's land? The answer is a resounding yes. A modern country name, printed on millions of passports and recognized daily at the United Nations, is essentially just a broken-down English translation honoring an ancient Celtic goddess of the soil. How incredibly cool is that? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this leaves you looking at the map a little differently, wanting to uncover the hidden histories all around us.